Hi folks, it's Walker here with Movie Science Review. Now, this channel is a bit of an experiment. I just thought it might be fun to talk about movies, but in a different sense. Not a traditional review per se, just a kind of a review of what I, as a professional engineer of sorts, see as what kind of clicks my interest, where I think might be a little odd or maybe actually really good representation of science and technology in the movies. Now, this is not a new concept, but when I poked around on YouTube, I didn't really see a whole lot of channels devoted specifically to this type of movie analysis. And it's great, there's some neat stuff about scientists and science and movies and that kind of stuff. It's sort of semi-one-off kinds of things, but I thought it would be neat to really just look at different shows. As a matter of fact, I was watching a really neat series called For All Mankind, and since I work in the aerospace industry, I thought it was a really fascinating show, an alternate history, and there's some stuff I thought was really represented really well. There's a few things I thought, well, that didn't seem quite right. And so I thought, well, it'd be fun to kind of just watch this show and pick out things that I think would be just real neat to the layperson who may not be familiar with the science and technology as represented in the TV show, and see what somebody like me, somebody who has an engineering background, actually thinks about the representations. Now, I don't claim to be a super expert in everything, and in fact, there's a lot of stuff I don't know, and some things I'll try to research, or just whatever knowledge I have working in the aerospace industry, and as sort of a geek nerd, that kind of person. So by all means, if I do get something wrong, please leave a note in the message in the chat area, so let me know what I got wrong or maybe what I got right, or how much of an idiot I am. But regardless, I have no ego to bruise, and I thought it'd be fun just to see how this sort of experiment works. I actually have another YouTube channel that does something totally different, and I thought, well, this might be kind of fun, something quick and easy, and just to give me a way to relax and watch shows while talking to you to see what our entertainment industry brings us and how accurate they are in representing things like science and technology and so forth. So enough of my rambling. Without any further ado, let's actually start with the show that actually started us all, For All Mankind. We'll start with season 1, episode 1, and let's roll.
I believe that this nation should commit itself to achieving the goal before this decade is out of landing a man on the moon and returning him safely to the earth.
So we get the beginning of the show. It starts with real history. John F. Kennedy in his famous, I believe it was 1963 speech well, I think it was assassinated in 1963, but in the early 60s, I'm terrible with dates, of landing a man on the moon. This was a big heated competition with the Russians to land a man on the moon, beat those Ruskies. Since they put the satellite up in orbit first, they put a man in space first. So America was seen as being a little bit behind the times, and so American technological prowess was nothing to sneeze at. And so I suspect Kennedy. There's all kinds of stories on it. I'm not going to go into it. You can research that, but it was on, as they say. So of course that's normal history. So obviously the show will get into alternate history, but so far it starts off with true events, and I've known some people that were there at the time, and this was hot and heavy, and this is and so it begins, as they say.
Down any minute now. The last official report we had.
Okay, so I can only imagine what it was like in 1969 to see an actual human beings going to land on the moon. We had science fiction for some time, but to see live on TV, which was probably pretty high tech as well, actual people in a spaceship landing on another celestial body. It can only be imagined. The groundbreaking, the what do they call it? The societal change that had embarked, the paradigm shift. That's the word I'm looking for, of landing men on the moon. Hey, that's not a real spaceship. It's fake. This show's terrible.
Tell you that right now. Things will never be the same.
Okay, so NASA is really on NASA Road 1. It was called the Manned Space Center. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just that the scenery in the background looks totally unlike anything in Houston, Texas. So I just thought that was kind of funny.
Experts have long anticipated a possible viewership.
This looks really very much like the actual Mission Control Center, and I suspect it is. The actual 60s, 70s era Mission Control Center has been restored, and you can actually visit and take a look at it at the Space Center for visitors. You can go and you can't really walk inside this room, but you can look through the windows, like on the left here, and look at the room. So I suspect they actually went down there and filmed this scene in that room. Okay, so we have the setup here where they watched the moon landing, and it's Russian. You obviously hear Russian, and the Russians made it first. So this is a really first divergence from real history to alternate history, and it's going to be interesting where the show goes from here, where now the Russians have landed on the moon first. And now, of course, real history is the Russians never made it to the moon at all. I believe they had some unmanned ships that crash landed on the moon. They had a lot of problems with their launch vehicle. They had a really overly complicated launch vehicle that they never could get running right. Here in America, they were able to do a much better job with the Saturn V rockets and really beat the Russians to the moon. And that was a real big first leap. So the hook on the show is something happened and the Russians made it first. And so the real history is, of course, nowhere near that. But hey, it's a TV show. Let's go with it. This should be fun. Red Moon, of course. Red being Russian, and they're on the moon. Okay, the reason why I picked this out because I thought it was funny. There's some sort of book. I'm not sure if it's a textbook or probably some sort of NASA document, and she just sort of, you can see what looks to be some sort of I think a path. I think the Earth is on it. It says Earth. I presume the moon is kind of behind her knuckles where you can't really see it, and it sort of looks like a lunar injection or translunar injection. But for some reason, it draws a circle around one of the coordinates, and it's a question mark. So I guess it's supposed to look technical, but it's really odd that you would do that. That doesn't seem to make any sense. Why would it just looks like some sort of coordinate system, and why would you circle? Maybe she's trying to do a math thing. I don't know. I thought it was funny. It's like, huh? Okay.
Apollo 11 is scheduled to fly in 2.5 weeks. Neil, Buzz, Mike.
Okay, we got more formulas and stuff on the blackboard. To be honest, I have no idea what it says. It looks, I don't know, just vectors maybe. It's kind of blurry. It seems a little odd that the astronaut guys would have that in there, but who knows? It could be something they were talking about, vectors or something, or coordinates. You never know. So I'm not going to be too anal about it. I just thought that was interesting. You know, I don't know too much about with the crew stuff, but these are presumably mostly test pilots, so it just seems odd that they'd have a whole bunch of math formulas on there when they'd probably be concerned with other things and leave that to the mathematicians.
Webb came down and told us the Russians put the first man in space.
And kind of another look at the whole board, and just some interesting formulas and stuff on there. If anybody knows what that is, or you can decode it, let me know if it makes any sense. I'm not a mathematician, and I don't claim to be one, so I'd be curious. So this is actually looks a lot like the actual building for the in NASA. There's a main building called Building 1, which most of the astronauts have offices, the management. It's one of the core building for that kind of stuff, and there's posters. This looks a lot like it, actually. I'm not sure if it's the actual build. It's not quite the actual building, but it does look a lot like it inside. It may be they may move some stuff around, so this is really pretty close. Even the elevators, the stuff on the side. I've actually been in a building before. It's been quite a while, so my memory is a little fuzzy. But I think that's a pretty good job of what it looks like.
Y'all plus 18.
Copy. -9 plus 18.
So I pulled this out because I thought this was kind of neat. This was the training And they actually did stuff like this. They had projectors. I understand there was actually they would run a camera over a model of the lunar surface on a sort of a rail system. It was a real crude simulator. They can simulate moving over the moon. So a lot of stuff that doesn't get really mentioned on is the training. From everything I understand, from what I read and talked to, lots and lots of training. These guys trained. Simulations. They didn't have the computer simulations like we have today, but they did what they could, and they would simulate all kinds of emergencies and alerts and that kind of stuff. So they knew if something went wrong, they knew how to fix it or try to. So that they're trying to establish that here a little bit in the series.
1202 is a program alarm for the AGC signaling executive overflow, no vac. The computer is rebooting itself, but it's not a problem.
I just found this interesting. I could imagine a lot of things like this happened where before the age of being able to look stuff up in the computers, you had to have these big notebooks filled with all kinds of codes and stuff, because usually it was a code, from what I understand, when something went wrong or had alerts. So you had to look it up. Nowadays, of course, we can look it up on a computer or it can tell you exactly what it is. But back then, computing was very limited. You had to look it up in a book. And in the show, she was hesitant and kind of admonished for butting in like that. But I think in reality, no. If somebody knew the answer to something, it was time critical, speak up. But you know, the dramatization, it's a TV show. But I just thought that was an interesting scene.
Almost a month has passed since the historic landing of a Soviet cosmonaut on the moon shocked the world. During that time, the crew of Apollo 11 has continued to train and prepare for their own historic landing on the lunar surface. While the Nixon administration...
Again, real neat, more training scenes, simulated moon, I don't know, just setting up some sort of apparatus in their spacesuits and that kind of stuff. So I could totally see this being exactly what they did back then.
would probably be canceled.
Okay, this was a nice touch. You have the crew walking into their vehicle in the spacesuits, and you see them carrying in their hand the portable air conditioner. So these suits, I'm sure, get real hot, and you're going to pump in some oxygen and air, cool air in them so they don't overheat. So that was just pretty neat. They got to carry it around. I imagine they're battery powered. So I thought that was kind of neat as well.
Hold in the count at exactly T-minus 2 hours.
All right, so this, the reason I pulled this out because I just thought the chart on the right was odd. Again, I'm not a super expert. If there wasn't really a chart like this, I was too lazy to go look it up. It just seems like you got some numbers. It's almost maybe a logarithmic scale. It seems odd. It just doesn't seem to make a whole lot of sense. There's no labeling on it. The coordinates, the numbers just seem weird. So I don't know what that is. So it just seemed unusually vague, I guess is the best way to put it. So that's why it caught my attention.
Because if we fail in our mission today, the United States will turn away from space.
Just caught my attention. This is the Gene Kranz character. I've actually met Gene Kranz on a couple of occasions. A very interesting guy. And I read his book as well, Failure is Not an Option. But for some reason, the reason why this caught my attention is I always thought he wore white vests. He has a story about how his wife knitted the vest, and crews, different crews, I guess, what do you call it, shifts, wore different color vests, and I believe his was always white, so I thought it was odd he was wearing a black one, but I can't remember if white wasn't originally his color, or did they get this wrong, I'm not sure, but I just thought that really triggered my my curiosity bone.
Eagle. After separation, the LEM will perform a pitch-up maneuver, and the two spacecraft will back away from one.
Okay, so there's a television news reporter explaining real quickly how the lunar module separates from the command module and then pitches down the thrust. And I thought, wait, that can't be right. That seems odd. I would think it would, after it detaches away, it'd move a safe distance and then fire the thrusters in the direction of travel to slow down, which would cause it to start to deorbit ascent, not to pitch down and point itself towards the moon. The thrust, that just seems odd. I don't think that's an actual orbital maneuver. Nothing I could find says that's how they did it. But you know, if somebody thinks that is really how they did it, let me know, because that just seems odd. That didn't seem right. Another scene with some display. Now this one actually looks like a lot more what an actual display would look like in mission control. You got a lot of acronyms, all kinds of I see gem stuff that if you're trained, you know what it means. AZ, fail, control. This looks like an actual display or something very, very close to it. So I thought that was pretty good. Okay, so this goes by really quick, but I caught it, and I thought it was very odd that suddenly the numbers would just go all garbled like that. It was really weird. I can't say it never happened like that, but this is telemetry stream, so you get all kinds of data and stuff. This is the screen we talked about earlier. And I find it hard to believe that if they lost telemetry, they would just go garbled. I would think if they lost telemetry, they'd get all the numbers would just freeze at the last known value, and you'd get some sort of notification that you lost data stream. But this really is not good if your display just goes all garbled because you don't know what the last state was. At least if you knew what the data was before when you lost, you'd have an idea what's going on, at least in part. But if your screen just goes wonky, that seems odd. I would presume, even though it's an analog world back then in the late 60s, they'd still have some sort of either some sort of digital or some sort of state model or something that would say, hey, maintain the last known values, don't go haywire like that. Again, that's just my thought. I don't know for sure, but I see it highly unlikely that it would just go fuzzy like this. Again, if anybody knows, let me know. It seems odd. Again, we have a screen that had data, then all of a sudden it says no signal. I would see that as highly unlikely it would do something like that. It seems odd, and at least from my engineering standpoint, I would not do that. That probably would piss off a lot of people. Okay, this scene kind of goes by real quick, but the orientation of the lunar model looks like exactly how I was explaining before how it should be. It's sort of, for lack of a better term, flying backwards over the moon. I don't want to get into orbital dynamics because I barely know it myself, but this is how you would do it. You would thrust in the opposite direction you're going, and that would slow you down, and the celestial body, the gravity from the body would pull you down. So this is how you would do a deorbit. And so this looks like exactly how it should be. So that's a nice touch. So I don't know what the news reporter was talking about, but hey, maybe just like news is not always accurate, so we'll go with that.
No bio reading.
I thought that display is funny. He's dead, Jim.
Lost contact. AGC is negative, and no data from the onboard computer. Flight, I've got nothing here.
He said AGC is negative. I'm not sure what that means. When I hear AGC, I think automatic gain control, but I don't know. So something happened, and they lost signal. They lost telemetry, which, okay, that all makes sense. Again, there's no signal. I believe it's just for the audience. It makes it obvious that something's bad, and they got the display would say something. The actual display probably wouldn't be nearly as dramatic as saying, no signal.
He doesn't get to make that decision.
Give him a direct command, an order.
The man's 200,000 miles away. How are you going to enforce it?
And again, one of the management makes a good point. It's like, yeah, you can tell them what to do, but they don't have to do it if they don't want to.
Tranquility Base, Houston. Neil, is that you?
Again, I thought it was funny that signal acquired. It seems a little bit sophisticated for 1969. I imagine they would know the signal is back and the telemetry is back, but it would. I'm pretty sure the indications would be totally different than that. Okay, we find out that the crew, Neil Armstrong and I don't know if that was Buzz Aldrin again or not, they actually did survive the landing. It was a hard landing. Looks like the lunar modules tipped over slightly. It took me a second to realize, but it looks like there is some sort of communications dish, antenna on the rocks, maybe a solar panel or something. So it seems to indicate, they may have said it in the audio, but it was hard to hear. They basically hot wired their communications link back to Earth and got it up and running. I guess it took them a bit of time to get that up and running. So now they're back in comm, and they're bouncing around the moon like happy puppies. And all is good. The first manned lunar mission to the moon is a success, although it was highly dramatized and they thought they were dead for a while. So anyways, that is my first shot at For All Mankind. Is my thoughts on the first episode. I've seen some of the other episodes, and they also have some interesting things I thought I'd like to talk about. So anyways, let me know in the comments below what you thought about my commentary. Hopefully it wasn't too boring. And if there's enough interest, I'll do some more. And on that note, until next time, I'll see you later.